Hello and welcome to the EchoChamber podcast. My name is Tony Groves and today we're returning to the homelessness crisis. Yet again, we're going back to it because the simple fact is it's only getting worse. As always, I'm joined by my co-host and the man who actually couch surfs in my games room. Martin, that is a pool table, not a bed.
Games room, pool table. God, I hate this bourgeois, don't you?
Ireland's biggest fake lefty here, folks. But much more importantly, we're delighted to be joined in the Tortoise Shack by Public Fundraising Manager with Focus Ireland, Ciesielski. Now, Karen, after butchering your name...
You did pretty well.
Listen, if I can get over that, we can get on with it. But no, Karen, thanks for coming into the podcast. It is very timely. We have a homelessness crisis, we have an emergency, and we have a situation where, you know, we've seen in the last 10 days, the Dublin City Council have said phrases like, the days of us building houses are over, which I thought was a staggering comment to pass. And then we saw last night, as recently as last night, Garda Station, where 7 children slept on chairs in a Garda Station. You're at the front line. You're Focus Ireland are right there at the front line. I've been lucky to speak to Mike Allen and talk about the work you guys doing. Maybe give us a sense of what is the real just from your point of view.
Well, firstly, thanks so much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be here to chat to both of you, especially Martin, who's my cousin, just for full disclosure. Well, I guess my work in Focus Ireland, I'm one of the lucky ones because my job is that I get to talk to supporters all the time. So people who do amazing stuff for us, from holding coffee mornings to making monthly gifts to leaving a bequest in their will. And I remain absolutely overwhelmed by their generosity and the way that people are coming together in the face of this crisis to say, this isn't normal. This isn't something that we can just accept and get on with our lives. It is something that is a tragedy. It's a crisis and we need to do something. So I'm consistently startled and shocked by the numbers, by the statistics. And I think, you know, I use the word shocked all the time because every month the statistics and the numbers come out and you know, we hear about 3,000 children, nearly 3,000 children who don't have a home. So last 3 years ago, it was just over 1,000 children. So we've tripled the number of children who don't have a home. And I think for me as a parent as well, when I think about children without a stable home, without a base, without a place to learn and grow and develop and play and do their homework and have their friends over and learn even things like walking around for toddlers, crawling space, it just really hits home with me in a way that is absolutely appalling. And I can't believe that we as a society can just shrug our shoulders and say, sure, what can we do? I mean, there are 3 things that we could do almost immediately. One is we could build more houses. I mean, you said right there that we were not apparently in the business of building homes anymore. But if we were to even free up the land that we own, as Irish people, we own the land, we could provide housing for 30,000 households. So that's one thing we could do tomorrow if there was the political will to do it. And sadly, I think there's just not. And every time, because all these statistics, there are stories, they're real people. And I think it's very easy for most people who have a home, who may take it for granted, may be very appreciative of their home, probably worked hard to get it as well, and to keep it. It's very easy to think of people without a home as some sort of other, some sort of, you know, people who are not like us. But I think that one of the main things that's happened over the last number of years is certainly the face of homelessness has really changed. And what you think of when you hear the word homeless, you know, traditionally it might have been an older man, single, on his own, perhaps with addiction or mental health issues. That's still true. There are still some members of our most vulnerable communities in the country who would fit that description. But nowadays, it also includes working people, people who have children, more than one, and just the thought of people walking around all day with their stuff, with no place to go in the evening. It should be enough for us to say, this isn't on. It's not acceptable.
There is an attitude, particularly with this government, that if you find yourself homeless, there's an element that you deserve it. You've done something to be there. But the increasing number of kids in homelessness now at the moment, you look at a 2-year-old. What has a 2-year-old done to deserve being in homelessness? No matter how centrist right wing you are, you can't look at that and say that child deserves to be homeless. But we've been told to normalise this. We've been told that this is normal, that child does deserve to be homeless.
I think one of the main things that we need to avoid is yes, children are completely innocent victims in this, but really I think it's important not to demonize people who find themselves homeless, and that's regardless of whether it was of their own doing, as some people might say.
The years of bad behaviour and these phrases that were kind of bandied about, and particularly...
We all partied. I think the thing is, we all make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. And sometimes people have the support and the capacity to have a cushion, or even like a supportive family, or a bit of money, or networks but behind them. And some people just don't. I mean, I know we work a lot with students from Belvedere College. They do sleep outs for us, and they're amazing supporters. It's also a private school, quite a high tuition. These are very privileged young people. And one of the things that we do in order to demonstrate how easy it might be to experience homelessness, or to be at the risk of homelessness, is take them through a series of events that might happen. So you have a fight with your family, you lose your job, you don't have anywhere to go that night, you don't want to go to a relation's house. 4 steps, sometimes 4 steps for these young men to consider, what would I do? I might sleep on a bench, or I might not have a home. So I think it's really important that we don't get into the situation of it's your fault, or and blame people, because the fact of the matter is we have 9,800 people who don't have a place to go tonight. And a right to a home is something that is fundamental. A right to an affordable home is a fundamental right.
It's actually that there is a protection in the UN.
There is.
Like, I sat down with Leilani Farah, and she outlined the actual fact that by denying people this dignity, denying them a front door, we're actually it's a breach of human rights.
It is, under our economic and social rights. It is. And so, and we're not talking about a right to a mansion.
No.
We're talking about, and we're also not talking about giving free homes to people who don't deserve them, or who've never worked for them. I don't think that is a useful or productive discussion to get into. What we're talking about is a right to an affordable home that's reasonable. And I think in this country, what we're looking at now is a situation where those affordable homes do not exist.
To take you back to, you said there's 3 things. The first one you said was about building homes. Now, just on that, before we go to the second thing, the state owns and land private, zoned and ready, that they can actually put up availability. I think Mel Reynolds puts the figure at about 114,000 units, if you want to go through the lingo, that housing units. So that's not necessarily 3-bedroom semis. That could be a mix of all sorts. That's already in our stock, so to speak. That land bank is there. We don't have the political will to really carry through with it. We've seen Dublin City Council say the cost of them taking a house from a private developer is on average 330,000. Yet we know Hugh Brennan and O'Coolon can build them for 165,000 once the state actually more or less Dublin City Council divested that land at serviced. I mean, come on, guys, it's not rocket science. It can be done. What was the second thing you think we should be doing?
Sorry, before I went on a tangent there.
Yeah.
So the second thing is that we can be looking to increase stricter measures for landlords buy-to-let landlords who are evicting tenants to either sell up or move family members in, which happens all the time. A lot of families in particular who are coming to our advice and information centres and presenting as homeless in our coffee shop and in other locations have been evicted. It's a simple fact. The landlord wants to sell, the landlord wants to move somebody in, and they get a notice to quit. So that's the second thing that we could do nearly overnight. And it is something that we, as at Focus Ireland, have suggested before. We had a bill in the Dáil in December 2016, and it was not taken forward. The third thing we can do is look at vacant properties. So it is an ongoing, I live in the North Inner City, and every day on my way into town, into Christchurch, I see boarded up houses all the time, whether they're privately owned or owned by the state or owned by who knows. They're just sitting there, sometimes for years, and they're just vacant for no good reason.
Well, they tell you it's vacant because, the prices the underlying asset is still increasing, and, there's...
I find that argument so offensive.
It is offensive, but
I remember... no, I'm not saying you're offensive.
Oh, yeah.
He perpetrates that argument. He's offensive.
I remember talking to a friend of mine once, and I was talking about as well, every community being home to people, to mixed communities that are social housing, affordable housing, and private housing. And I said, how come we don't have mixed communities all over the place, including Ballsbridge and parts of Fingal and, Killiney? And I know that there are small pockets, but certainly not on a wide scale. And my friend said, but the land is way too expensive there. And as if everyone we're firstly, some people aren't entitled to live in these more rarefied parts of our city and country. But secondly, we own this land. Most of the land that I'm talking about, it's publicly owned. So to sit and say, but we deserve to make the most money we possibly can by selling it to developers and not the people who actually live and work here, it's offensive to everybody.
There's an argument where people have said, and this is where we fall down in terms of the electorate, because a large part of the electorate lost a large sense of personal worth because of the financial crash. Property prices plummeted, people felt more exposed, and negative equity.
I still feel sort of shocked. Yeah. I'm getting over it now.
But when you see then property prices begin to creep back up, it creates this false sense of personal wealth. And what that actually, and you've got to understand, there's a psychosis at play. There's almost a groupthink that comes in there where we're seeing this and we're not even recognizing that. We're not repeating the tricks or the mistakes of the past is what we're being told. I think the Taoiseach recently said there's no land bubble was the phrase he used. I mean, there's bubbles blowing down George's Quay.
We have a 300% increase in the value of the land. 300%.
No. I hate when people say 300% in the value. That's crazy. That's just what you can extract from it. Yeah. This is just pure rent seeking at its purest form.
Yeah, I mean, I find it really odd because, where is the money going? So we were busted for a long time, and now apparently we're back. But there's still no houses. And I know that there was a crunch. So during the 10-year stagnation period that we saw through the recession and austerity, I know in my community, loads of services shrank or simply went away. And we're talking about addiction supports for childcare, after-school supports. Those were simply just evaporated, gone. And now apparently we're back and we're supposedly, swimming in money again, but it's not where it needs to be. And when you see, I know I ride my bike through Summerhill every day, And there's student housing popping up all over the place. Two big developments in Summerhill, one on Dorset Street, one on Thomas Street. It's everywhere.
Very profitable though.
They're very profitable. So how come we can put students in these? I think they're charging up to, is it €700 a week?
So actually,
is that what it is?
298, I think, is what they were charged.
$950 a month to $1150 was the top end. But you're going to, what's actually in effect, these are communal co-living. High density, you can strip back on, there's no need for parking, there's no need for, let's have a shared kitchen, all of these facilities.
Just squeezing as many people as we possibly can.
It's the most profitable use of that land, that really expensive land.
It is. So we can build student housing and we can build hotels and we can build office space really easily. So why on earth can't we build homes for the people who are already here?
Policy not to build. When you have a crisis that is ongoing and just keeps getting worse and worse, it becomes policy. It is policy to have homeless people. We've had the Taoiseach try and normalise it. We've had all his minions come out and tell us he's right to normalise it. But we, those of us with any kind of memory, know that it wasn't like this 10 years ago. It certainly wasn't like this 20 years ago. And to get the homelessness figures that you want to match where we're at now, you have to go back to the 1850s, the 1860s to get those homelessness figures.
I think as well. So those are three policy changes that we could make, which would add stock. Let's say I know they keep talking about stock and supply.
Yeah, but sadly that's the
So we could add homes, and that's a simple thing that we could do. We could keep people in some homes by working with landlords and stopping them from evicting them. We could look at vacant properties.
This bill is going to be represented on the floor of the Dáil. I know Mike was in, and they're planning. They've reworded it, recut it, and they're going to try and get it back through again. The issue, obviously, is security of tenure in Ireland. We have such a weak security of tenure. Like, we keep getting this ridiculous phrase where they say, so let's go back to the Taoiseach's own words where he said, by international standards, our homelessness figures weren't that high. So yes, by international standards, Taoiseach, I can get a 10-year lease. I can rent for all my life in one of these.
I can get a fixed rate mortgage that's very reasonable for 30 years in other places.
Much better. Like we know this. We know all of this to be true. So if you're going to compare, you're comparing apples with oranges, but you're just showing the apple that you want to show.
Also, it's interesting that we're comparing problems but not solutions.
Yeah.
So in other places, they have looked to solve homelessness in really creative, collaborative ways with organisations like ours, so non-profits, with public housing bodies, with private housing bodies, and come up with solutions that really work.
Oh, there's loads of solutions.
There's lots of things that we could and should do. So there's the policy work that we're doing in order to make policy changes, structural changes. And then also there's the really important work of supporting people who are at risk of or experiencing homelessness right now.
And that's it. And that's the rub there, because you're talking about, you have to actually have a roadmap to fix things over the course of a number of years, but you also are fighting fire right now on the ground where I heard someone said today, I think it was Anthony Flynn, said that there were up to 3 families presenting homeless in Dublin per day.
So last year, we supported over 14,500 people in different ways. Through advice and information, support direct housing, moving people on from homelessness and emergency accommodation back into homes. We helped one family out of homelessness every day. At the same time, 2 to 3 families more were coming in. So that's just stemming the tide. It is just running to stand still, really, as it is. And one of the best ways, as we know, to stop homelessness is really by preventing it from ever happening in the first place. So we try to intervene early, negotiate with landlords. We'll even secure a lease and then rent it back to a family or a tenant of Focus Ireland. So we do that all over the country. We're also building houses, where we just opened an apartment complex last year in Harold's Cross. We're working on one in Johns Lane West in town, which is due to reopen in November. So we're increasing our own stock and buying houses. and also renting and doing different things to provide homes for people who need them. We also recently opened our coffee shop in the evenings just to provide families support. So these are families who it's called self-accommodating. So basically what that is speak for is families, parents and guardians have to spend basically the afternoon and evening ringing hotels and B&Bs to try to find themselves a place for that night. They might get a couple nights in a row, but there's no even security there. So, and then this is all while trying to keep kids in school, kids entertained, homework done, and just the normal everyday family life going.
And you're doing that literally in public, on the streets. You've more and more people coming into the cafe to stay in the cafe while they wait for places.
Yeah, and we recently opened up our hours later and restricted use of the cafe in the afternoons and evenings to families who otherwise might be hanging out in McDonald's or Penny's or in the park if the weather is okay.
Shocking stuff.
Oh, that's
shocking.
Was it Patrick Freen's piece in the Irish Times I read while I was away about the library's been used for people who are homeless just to hang out in for the day, giving them saying, it's the warmest place around. You know, I'm sorry, but these are the real stories of real suffering that are happening right now. And
it is. And when I think about, like leaving the house with my nearly 3-year-old, the amount of stuff I need to even just go to the park for an hour, bags, scooters, footballs, what have you, I can't imagine leaving with all my stuff for an entire day and you know, carrying that around and not knowing where you're going to go, even just the logistics.
There seems to be, you know, the model they've used so that, you know, if you're a family and you're presenting homeless, it seems that the policies that are in place are there to humiliate you. That you have to walk around with your bags all day, all your possessions on your back, that you have nowhere you can sit down, boil a kettle, make a sandwich, nothing. It all seems to be to embarrass you, to other you, as you were saying in the beginning. They are othered. You see them on the streets walking around with their bags, and they are othered. I mean, I know in Medicine Hat in Canada that what they have made this target that anybody who presents homeless gets a home within a week. And they're doing it, and it's working. And it's the cheapest model to deal with homelessness that's available. It's absolutely the cheapest model to deal with it.
Well, I think you've brought up a really good point in that the solution to homelessness, this issue, this trauma, is a home. Is a home. And we have a program called Housing First, where we've piloted it in Dublin and for young people in Limerick, working with the Peter McVerry Trust and state bodies as well. So in Dublin, we have about 200 people who may have a complex set of issues. They may be long-term homeless, so they may have addiction issues or mental health problems and may not have had a home for a long, long time. So it takes a while to reach them, firstly, because sometimes they're the hidden homeless. We don't know sometimes where they are. But what we find is once you have a home, a lot of the other problems that a person might have are more easily tackled or addressed. So and it's not just a home, it's wraparound support as well. So yes, the solution to homelessness is a home. Yeah. And I think that it's interesting to me in terms of the imagery about homelessness. And there are certain traits that people ascribe to people who are homeless. But those traits are direct results of just not having somewhere to sleep that night. So you might picture somebody with bags with them. Well, if you had a home, you wouldn't have bags. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Yeah, but again, at the risk of repeating ourselves, there are adequate solutions that can be started with now. They can be started today. You can refurb vacant properties for an average of about €40,000. It takes about 3 months. You mean you could bring 640 vacant units in Dublin within the two canals, I believe, back into service within 6 months. you've got all of these things. We've seen, I remember Mel Reynolds made a great suggestion where he turned around and he said, okay, let's fix the above shops and things like that. Let's make them viable to say Airbnb, and then we kick Airbnb out of the residential stuff. You know,
such a simple solution.
Because we know Airbnb is a problem, and you know, we saw a video recently where a guy walked around somewhere in Dublin 1 with his camera phone, and he showed little key locker. I think it was 12 key lockers in the space of a 2-minute walk or something. That's all Airbnb, you know, and this is that sort of stuff. That and then, you know, we get thrown down our throats that, oh, you know, the free market. You know, I'm sorry guys, but housing isn't a normal commodity that you just want to trade. We're making it like that. Our government believe it is that. They actually, whether it's their politics or their economics, that's what they kind of believe, that the market will actually eventually correct itself. No, the market is designed to make profit, and if it's profit at human misery, well. That's what it'll have to be.
I think Airbnb as well is a specific, it's a specific kind of niche issue, because they're also, so there's lots of people who would otherwise be renting long term, or, you know, even possibly buying if landlords didn't want to make a profit from Airbnb. But also it's not regulated. So even business owners like B&Bs, actual B&Bs and hotels are also at a disadvantage, because they have to pay rates and taxes and all these sort of business costs, wages, that Airbnb simply, me and you could rent out a place and not have to do any of those things. It's also outside of the scope of revenue. So I don't really have a problem fundamentally with something like Airbnb. I used it on holidays and other places, but I do think that it's not regulated, and also there should be potentially a cap in any certain area on places that could be zoned.
I just returned from Barcelona, and the phrase they were using is "refugees welcome, Airbnb out." That's the phrase they're using.
I know in other cities they are. I know in New York they've had huge regulations brought in on Airbnb, and I think it's actually, is it on the way out in New York, I think, or
there's definitely changes afoot in terms of their...
in Dublin it does seem that, you know, every second place is popping up with Airbnb. So the one thing though about that is things change so fast, especially in something like Airbnb, where you can just rent a place with an app, and authorities and revenue, and we seem a little bit on the back foot with regard to a company like Airbnb in terms of regulation stepping in and saying also, what kind of city do we want? Do we want a place where tourists come and go and rent everywhere?
It's been very clear what kind of city this administration wants. It wants a very gentrified city. It wants the working people within the city maybe 30 miles away, bus them in at a huge expense, bus them back out again. That's what they want. They don't want homeless people in the city. And when the Pope comes, we'll see it. We will see this scourge of taking people off the streets. They will be taken off the streets for the Pope's visit. For those couple of days, you won't see a homeless person.
One of the things I find interesting about living and working in Dublin and in Ireland is that all of our problems, if you will, all of our social problems are out there for everyone to see, whether it's on Grafton Street or whether it's down by the Quays or by the Liffey. You know, everybody moves in the same spaces, and I always think that that's at least we don't brush our problems, if you will, under the carpet and out of sight and out of mind. You know, you go to some places and you say, God, there's nobody here, no one begging or no one sort of who is visibly even poor in the city centre. And I hope that doesn't happen, especially because Pope Francis is such a champion apparently of the poor. I would like him to see us as we are. I also don't think that I hate when they say things like, oh, what would tourists think?
Yeah.
You know, and I always think, geez, what about the people who live here and about the people who bring up their families here and go to school here and it, you know, how can we prioritize this almighty dollar, this almighty tourist pound?
We do have a problem, because that's the green jersey mentality that we're often taught that led us into a lot of the worst mistakes we made during the austerity budgets, was on the basis of take the hit, wrap yourself in the green jersey. We don't want to look bad in front of the rest of the EU. And you're like, but financially, we just took on, you know, a huge tranche of debt. In effect, some German banks through the ECB lent us money to repay German banks.
I know.
You know,
how do you find it in the era of fundraising now? I mean, that has to be a tough gig for anybody.
Well, I think Irish people are exceedingly generous, and our economy has revived to some degree. They also, the supporters we have, so, you know, over 9,000 of our supporters amazingly give by regular donation every month to the work that we do. People give and give and give in lots of different ways. During the recession, it was extremely difficult. Our job is always hard. It's always hard to raise money. It's always hard to make sure that we are raising awareness and continuing to highlight an issue, particularly homelessness, because it seems to be never going away. You know, and to stay top of mind.
The poor are always with us.
The poor are always with us.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry. I'm going back to that workhouse mentality that actually still.
It's also a neoliberal mentality.
Yeah, it still pervades. I'm sorry, it just does.
Yes, because we live in a capitalist society, which has room for poverty. We will probably always, to some degree, have people who do not have a lot of money and people with a lot of money. But one thing that we could do is make sure that everybody has a home. We could do that simply, and I mean, I say simply, there's probably lots of difficulties that could get in the way.
No. See, this is the problem. We overcomplicate simple matters. There are solutions. There. I'm sorry, but when you walk out, there's cost rental, there's co-ops, there's approved housing boards, there's social and affordable. There's a plethora.
The real simple of it is
government-backed mortgages, government-backed loans.
Humans have been building shelters for as long as we've been around. We've been building shelters. So we know how to do it. It's something that's in the genes. We can do it. They can complicate it. They can add all the rules they want. But the basic thing is, humans can build shelters for other humans.
There's no scarcity of land.
I feel like if we wanted to, as a society, end homelessness tomorrow, we would. You know, we've seen enormous progressive social change in Ireland in recent years, with the marriage equality referendum, with repealing the 8th Amendment. These are, I know activists who've been involved in both things would kill me for saying that it came around really rapidly, because they've been working on these on these issues for a long time. But when change came, it happened fast. And so we know that there is an amazing capacity for Irish people to show compassion, to show tolerance, and to get involved and politically engaged.
We've also seen in the past that Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil governments can build massive amounts of houses very quickly.
We can get a lot done. I mean, as we can as a society, as a people, we could solve this.
There's no question, but I think you've touched on a really important point, though, because there is a disconnect there. We've been socially progressive, but we are still economically conservative. And sometimes you have to have the argument with, Martin looks at me like I'm evil, but the simple fact is, Martin, the majority of voters agree with me. They're going to vote. Leo's going to win the next election. Shut up for a second. He's going to win the next election on the basis that the simple fact is, people who think, you know what, geez, I'm kind of more centre left, but you're not really. Economically, you're wedded to the conservative right wing values. And what we need to do is have that argument now, which is why the left has been so ineffective, by saying, actually what you're doing now by paying money to HAP, paying money for emergency accommodation,
it's
more expensive and a bigger drain on you, Mr. Fiscally conservative, than actually building houses. And that's where you can win the argument, because some of this is in the pockets.
We've been arguing that since we went on air. We know other people who've been arguing that for years before us.
Yeah, but where's the cohesive?
I think the fundamental human problem that is behind this is, but if you get something, then you're going to take away from me.
Yeah.
And I think what we really need to do,
we're all still Maggie Thatcher,
dispel that myth that by you having a safe, secure home, it's somehow going to threaten me. And I think with the marriage equality referendum, we showed very clearly that by you marrying the person you love, it's not a threat to me and the person I love and my marriage. We can coexist very happily. And I think we need to, I know it sounds like a leap, but apply a similar view to housing. So you having a safe place to live doesn't infringe on me at all. In fact, it makes my life better.
It's safe. It makes your life safer.
And safer. And because I really think that when we have nearly 3,000 children with no home, it's diminishing all of us. Yeah. It is a failure, and we will look back on this period with a lot of shame.
I think so. I think you're dead right, and I think that the stuff that's coming back from previous generations, such as the Magdalene laundries, I can't see these family hubs. I can't see them as the only thing missing in a family hub is the laundry. It's the only thing that's missing.
Well, hang on. I want to broaden it out again and say direct provision has been with us for a long time, and it's not that long ago that Irish people voted to say that children born here can't have.
Shameful. Shameful.
The thing about hubs are the family hubs. That you mentioned, they're relatively new, and I know they're still kind of getting off the ground. So we haven't really seen how they are going to have an impact.
I'd rather not see.
So the one thing about family hubs is, yes, it will improve the day-to-day lives of people living there, because there'll be playgrounds and there'll be storage space for buggies and there'll be room and they can cook and do normal family things. However, it is just managing homelessness as opposed to solving homelessness.
As Mary McAuliffe said to us, it's warehousing the poor. And it's what we've always done in Ireland. We warehouse the poor. We've done it continuously throughout our history. It's never ever stopped.
I think as well, around the Western world has had a similar policy approach to housing and to providing accommodation for people who can't afford it. Yeah. And we've seen it play out.
It was Clinton, it was Blair, it was all, and these chickens are just coming home to roost now. And it's been the shrinking of the public sphere, which is a bigger argument for another day. But it's been the shrinking of a public sphere for decades now. Yeah. And now what we're seeing is that we've woken up to the realization that actually there's 3,500 children. It's more than 3,000 children now, and I want to go and say that it's bigger than that again, because we've had selective accounting done on many ways. We do know there's obviously hidden homelessness as you referred to, and then the other thing, coming back to the fundraising side of things. Mm-hmm. It's crucial that people support it. And because sadly, we can say that the government has all the solutions and we can throw up our hands, but you've got to fight the fire that's happening right now. Absolutely. And I think that is, we need support more now than we ever do, because we are stretched beyond capacity to even respond to the daily crisis, let alone work for long-term policy and structural changes. So every key worker, every project worker we have is working around the clock as much as they can to try to help people who need it right now. And, we're grateful to everybody who makes a donation, puts money in a bucket, holds a coffee morning, does something absolutely extraordinarily generous, like leaves a gift in their will. There's loads and loads of ways that people support us every day, and we just are so grateful.
Well, we'll put up some links with this when we're done. We'll put some up links. And thanks very much for coming
Thanks
in
so
and have a
much.
chat with us. It's great to have a family member in. I'm delighted to have a family member in.
I hope I didn't mess it up, Mark. Bring the family name down.
Yeah, it is. I think it's nice that you brought your daughter to work. Thanks, Karen. It's great to have a chat, and I think it is the number one crisis in this country. It affects every level of society now. When you see David Kiff wants to leave the country, we know we have.
I think as well that it is important just to try to end on a positive note.
Yeah.
That we do know that we can help, and we do know that people can leave homelessness and move into a safe, secure home, and make homelessness a blip, something that happened for a very short period of time in somebody's life, that is in the rearview mirror, and they can rebuild and restart and move on. We know that can happen. We've seen it happen time and time again. We know we can't do it alone, and that we need people to get behind us, and we definitely need the government to do more, because we can't solve this alone.
It's a great way to end it, folks. Just please go focusIreland.ie/donate. Give what you can. It's really appreciated, because we know that they can make a difference. You can make a difference. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.